Hello, everybody. Good to have you all here. And once again, we are here today with our friend Roberto Watanabe, and he is keeping with the study of the book In the Realms of Mediumship. Now we are going to the part number 4. So just recap. Every single month, Roberto is giving us details about these books in the realms of mediumship. And it's a pleasure to have you here. So good evening, Atanabe. How are you, my friend?
I'm fine, thank you, Esteban. Glad to be here with you all again.
Good, good. So in order to start, let me do the initial prayer.
Okay,
So let's raise up our thoughts towards our mentors, ask them to enlighten ourselves, to guide Watanabe today during his talk, and be part of the journey today for those who will watch us online and for those who will watch us in the future. So be it. Amen. Okay. Okay. So let me add here. Okay. Can you see the?
yes.
Okay. So the floor is yours, my friend.
Okay, thank you, Esteban. Hello, everybody again. So, today we will proceed with the study of this book of the spirit Andre Luis, which is in the realms of mediumship. It is the description he does about the experience that he had with his colleague Hilario and his instructor Aulus in from this the spiritual realm point of view, because they are all discarnate, okay, and they are working in some spirit centers here on Earth, and in this chapter here, telepathic domination, the group Aulus with Andrea Luis and Hilario was just leaving the Spirit Center where they followed some spiritual activities there. And as they were leaving, another spirit, incarnate, called Teonilia, and she was one of the workers in that Spirit Center. And she asked the Aulus for help uh, for a friend of her whose name is Anisha. Anisha she's also a co-worker at the spiritual spirit center, and she's incarnate. Okay, and Teonilia says to Aulus that Anisha was going through hard times because besides the raising of three daughters and assisting her sick mother, he was having a problem with her husband because Jovino, who is her husband, was in love with another woman and was dominated by her thoughts, the other woman's thoughts. That's why that's the reason for the title of this chapter, telepathic domination, and the domination of another woman upon Jovino's mind. Okay, that's the issue here in this chapter. And this telepathic domination also is a kind of a mediumship, right? Because it is an influence about some other person on the person's mind. And so that's what the group is going to study here in this chapter. And then Aulus promised Cornelia that the next day at nightfall, they would go to Anisia's home to see what they could do to help her. And when they get there at the next day, nightfall, Tunisia was waiting them at the entrance. And at that time, the family was having dinner. Uh, Anisia with her husband uh, Jovino and her three daughters. And soon after finishing the dinner, Jovino says that he must leave because he's going to have a conversation about some big business deal. No? And when at the moment he says that, then Andrea Luis says that a surprising image of a woman appeared before Jovino's eyes, as if it projected upon him from a distance. So this is the telepathic domination. Right? The woman was dominating him through thought, telepathically um, projecting her own image to his mind, and then kind of controlling him. Right? And then after preparing himself, he left home, right, uh, to 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 go to the big business deal, which it was not that, right, and then Anisia fell in tears and said, "Well, business is just one lie after another," right, because she knew that she was going to meet the other woman. And then Aulo explained that Jovinus was under an imperial telepathic domination by that other woman, and to which he surrendered easily. And what is this kind of a telepathic domination? Is an influence that the incarnate souls have on each other, right? Which sometimes becomes a dangerous obsession because if I have an influence on some other person and I start to harm that person, then it becomes a dangerous obsession. Right? It could be a good thing also, right? Because I can influence another person and looking for his or her good. No? In that case, it would not be an obsession. And the effect that Jovino was suffering also involved amnesia because they were married, right? So Andrea Luis says, husband and wife breathed in a system of mutual influence. And then Anisha was unable to immunize herself, Andrea Luis says, with the benefits of unconditional forgiveness. When we read this at the first time, we think, well, but she was being harmed by her husband. Why she would forgive him, right? So it's difficult to understand in the beginning, but at the end of the day, the lesson that we are going to see here is that by being angry about these things, the person ends up harming herself in this case, right? So forgiveness is a way of getting out of such an awful situation, right? So that's the whole context here, right? So then at 8 p.m., it was time for Anisha to have her prayers with her ailing mother, right? Which was on another room there in her home. So then she raised up and goes to the room where her mother was, and then Andrea Luis, well, they followed her, and then Andrea Luis says that in a small room, Elisa, which is Anisia's mother, a woman of about 70 years old, uh, she had severe shortness of breath because she was very ill. Actually, she was close to passing away, right? So, And then what Andrea Luiz also noticed is that an unpleasant looking spirit, discarnate of course, who was Limpio, Elisa's son, and also Anisha brothers, and he was clinging to her mother, right, to Elisa, increasing her physical torment. And Olympio, this kind young guy, he had the misfortune, Andrelli says, of wallowing in the vice of a drunkenness, right? And then on a night of excess, he was murdered by someone else, right? And the mother, Elisa, used to evoking him incessantly. And then the mother by herself kept the Olympio at her bedside, right? And as he was not in a good condition, the proximity, his proximity to her mother was not a good influence, right? Because she was very ill. And so that's why Andrea Luis says here that Olympia was clinging to her, increasing her physical torment. And then Anisha sat close to her mother, Andrea says, and began to pray, right? And what is interesting here is that at the moment that Anisha starts to pray, several discarnate sufferers entered the room. Well, these discarnate people are not relatives of Anisha, right? They were spirits that had passed away, was, let's say, in the surroundings, and then attracted by this prayer, they entered the room and approaching Anisha like patients asking for medication. Well, so this is a situation similar to the spirit center, right? When we have activities in the spirit center, while we are here, we incarnate, we workers and the people, the patients, the incarnate patient which comes to the spirit center, we also have a lot of discarnate patients that come to the spirit center looking for help, right? And in this case, these patients go to Anisha's home. It wasn't a spirit center. So what Andrea Luis is trying to show us here is that whenever we are reunited for prayer, for do something good, we attract this suffering spirit. So everywhere and every time we can help them, right? That is what's happening here because Anisha is thinking only about her mother, right? But by starting the prayer, he attracted all these people here. And then she opened the book of a gospel and surprised, she noticed that the text described the necessity to work and forgive. You see, the text was directed to her needs at that moment, right? The need of forgiveness. So that is very, very interesting also because when, for example, when we are at our home, right, and we are going to make a prayer here in Brazil, we we also we always say people to have gospel at home, right? Once a week at a certain time, we stop and then we open a we make a prayer, open a book of gospel, for example, the gospel according to Spiritism, for example, and then we read, we make some comments, and then we vibrate by all the suffering people, and then we do the final prayer. Right? So uh, then when we open the book and uh, without choosing any text, in some way we are directed to open that text that's better to us to read at that moment, right? So that's what happened here with Anisha. Right? Apparently, she opened the book at chance, right? But it wasn't. Actually, Tunilia, her discarnate spirit friend was directing her here, right? And then she began to talk, and then Andrea Luis says, her flowing voice transmitted Teonilia's thoughts as Teonilia tried to soothe her tormented heart, right? So what is interesting here is that Anisia is speaking, her mother, for example, is listening to her, but all that the other suffering spirits also are listening to her, and who is directing her talk, right? It is Teonilia, her discarnate friend, and the Teonilia talking try to help Anisia herself, right? So this is also very interesting because it seems that she's speaking to her mother, and also without knowing, she's speaking to the discarnate suffering spirits there. But actually, she was also speaking to herself, right? Under the direction of Teonilius, because her talking was soothing her own tormented heart, right? And then her commentary, Andrea says, also gave courage to the spirits around her who longed for the light as well as peace and moral reform. Right? So that's what happened here. So you see that in a home of a family, it is happening what happens exactly in a spirit center, right? So that's why I said, right, doesn't matter the place or the hour, right? We always have this opportunity to help the suffering spirits. And then after finishing, she stretched out beside her mother and tried to think, to reflect a little bit. And then Aulus, the Angelus instructor, and Teonilius, her friend, her discount friend, began applying passes, right? Passes to her head, and she felt overcome by a gentle hypnosis. Actually, they are incentivizing her to disconnect from her physical body, right? And so that after a few moments, Andrea Luis says, she leaves her sleeping body and came to meet them. So she, Anisia, and spirit come, and then in spirit she can interact with Andrea Luis and Teonilia and all the other discarnated people there, right? So, and she appeared afflicted and wanted to see her husband, and then supported by Teonilia's arms, Andrea Luis says, uh, Anisia heads off, as she had known beforehand where she could find her husband, Jovino, right? So, and then Aulo explains that the souls who lived in close association are linked to one another by magnetic ties, right? So that's something interesting also because actually Anisia, uh, while awake, while incarnating her body, she even didn't know where Jovino had gone, right? But in spirit, uh, linked by the magnetic ties to her husband, then she can find him, right? So that's what is happening here. And then they all follow Anisia, and they get to a nightclub, right? So there in a large room, as Luis says, there was Jovino and the woman who made herself known to him, to them telepathically, right? Who was controlling Jovino's mind. And there were diverse spirits, discarnate, of course, spirits surrounding the group, forming a harmful circle of vampires, Andrea Luis says. Why vampires? Because those discarnate spirits was benefiting from the, the conversation, the unedifying conversation that they were having there, the, the drinks that they were consuming, um, uh, um, the smoking and so on and so forth, right? And then upon finding her husband in such a situation, Anisha let out, Andrea Luis says, a painful scream and ran out to the street, right? So she can handle to stay there. And then Aulus embraced her paternally and says, well, Anisha, dear sister, calm down, courage, don't lose hope. And then she answered, well, she replied, hope? I'm being miserably cheated on, right? So how could I have a hope, right? And then Aulus explains to her that the marriage is not a simple work in the garden of the flesh, that the home is a school where souls come together for their own regeneration, because in our home we don't have only spirits that were fond of us from the past, but we can also have some enemies from the past, right? Which incarnated in our home just as brothers or son or father, mother, doesn't matter. But the main objective is to regeneration, right? So to regenerate, to restate a good relationship with them, right? Or among themselves. And then Aulus keeps explaining that schools, home is a school, right? And schools have teachers and students. And then the more advanced in that school should help the less advanced. So what he means here is that Anisha, spiritually, she was more elevated than Jovino, right? So she is a kind of a teacher there. In Jovino, although apparently he's the man of the home, the house, and he was a less elevated. He's the student there, right? So that's why he says, Jovino is a plant that the Lord has entrusted into your caregiving hand, right? And then she replied, yes, but what can I do about the woman that is controlling him? Right? How can I accept her? How can I forgive her, right? Then Allah says, well, we must have compassion even towards her, right? Because her awakening of what he's doing now, which is a bad thing, will be truly painful. So this is an interesting thing also here, because sometimes a person is doing a lot of harm to others and are very happy, right? Because he or she, in this case, she has pleasure in that situation, but the future will not be that happy to the person, right? So that's what Aulus is explaining here. So, and also he says that no matter how afflictive the memory of her is, um, you should remember her in your prayers as a sister in need of a fraternal help, because what Aulus is mentioned here is about the, let's say, the relationship in the past lives with such a woman, right? Because such a kind of a thing doesn't happen from nothing, right? There is also connections on past lives. So that's why he always says, right, to Anisha, who might she have been in the past? Someone we hurt. Huh? What will she be to us in the future? Our mother or daughter? Huh? So uh, he explained that like I just said, right? I can have an enemy presently in our current life, but probably in the future, there is a good probability that I will find this enemy again in the future, and I mean in other and future incarnations, and sometimes as a relative, right? So in order to reconciliate. Huh? That's why all is explained here. So he's giving a big view, right, of a life. Life is not just this present one, but it encompasses the past lives and also the future lives, right? So that's why he says, do not condemn her, right? Hatred is like a fire that consumes everything, but love knows how to put out the fire and rebuild the relationship. And then Anisha resigned. She accepted, right, all those her recommendation, and she promised him obedience. And after saying a prayer of a praise, Anisha then uh, went home, right, to come home to her home. And then she wakes up, right, because all this was happening her in her spiritual body, right? But then when she went home, I mean the spirit with her spiritual body went home, then she wakes up in her dense body. It means she connected again, right, with her physical body that were kept there sleeping on the bed. And then she wake up with the soul renewed, Andrade said, right? And then she proceeded to prepare her mother's medication. So what Hilario, André Luis' friend, noticed is that Anisha is going to be a good medium, right? And she can work as a good medium in the future, right? After developing her mediumship, because all that we have seen here since her prayer there, when he attracted those suffering people, and now all these situations that happen after that indicates that she's going to be a very good medium in the future. And I always agree with Hilario, right? And then what is interesting that Aulo says here is that Anisha was unable to change the facts per se with the prayer, uh, meaning that by praying she would not, her husband Jovino would not deviate from the other woman, right? But through prayer she would be able to change herself, right? Meaning to forgive, for example, no? To look at the old situation in a more broader view, right? So as according to what Aulos explained to her. So that's what is interesting here also, because sometimes when we are going through a difficult situation in our lives, we can pray, and that would not exactly change the situation, right? If someone, for example, is hurting us, but we can change ourselves, right? And in the way we react to that situation. So that is a good benefit from prayer. So then the next night, so then that night was over, and then the next day, and the following night, the group, Aulus with André Luiz and Hilario, returned to Anisha's home, but now with the purpose of helping her sick mother, right? So, and then they found Elisa, which is Anisha's mother, greatly agitated in the process of disengaging from her physical body. So he was close to passing away, right? And then she was overexcited and greatly afflicted. And the interesting thing here, she says that she was being chased by a man who was going to shoot her. Right? And then also she called out for her son, Olympio, and she says that she see spiders. She sees spiders and snakes at the foot of her bed. So that's very interesting, because we can think, well, why she's looking, she's being chased by a man who is going to shoot her. Why she's seeing spiders and snakes, and what is interesting. And then Anisha said, "Mom, calm down. Let us trust in the providence. Jesus is our watchful friend." So after all, what's going on here, right? Actually, what's going on, how is explained, right? So Olympio, who is Elisa's son, uh, he had been murdered, as we said, and clung into her mother like a parasitic plant, right? Asphyxiating a frail tree. But her mother evoked him insistently, right? So, and then he was, by attending to her mother's request, he was entangled to her, actually harming her. And in this case, Andrea Luis says, as weak as Elisa was, she succumbed to her son, whose fear and disequilibrium were transferred to her. What's happening? What happened here is that what was a kind of a mediumistic incorporation. Well, actually, Olympio, the son, incorporated in his sick mother's body, and so that when she says that she is being chased by a woman or by a man who is going to shooting her, it's not she herself which is telling that, but is Olympio who is incorporated in his mother's body, right? So when she sees that she's seeing spiders and snakes, it's not her that is looking such a snakes and spiders, but is Olympus' experience when he was drunk, for example. He had a kind of a hallucination, right? And then she used to see spiders and snakes. And so that is very interesting here, because we are seeing here a poor woman that is going to die, but who is acting as a medium, and is uh, her own son is incorporating in her body, and transmitting all his experiences, right, and past experiences through her. So that's what happened here. This is mediumistic incorporation. We call in Spiritism the phenomena of psychophony, right? Psychophony, right? When the spirit talks about through the medium. So therefore, says she was reflecting his remembrance, not her, right? His remembrance of the past and the dreadful visions that he had, and which is common to victims of chronic alcoholism, right? Alcoholism. So that's what happened here. That's why the title, of Mediumship on the Deathbed. Then Aulus, using magnetic process, or giving some passes on Elisa's body, she detached the Olympio, and then as soon as he is disconnected from his mother, Elisa becomes completely prostrated because she is close to passing away, right? So meaning that when Olympia was incorporated in her, she would manifest some energy. But when Olympia detached from her, then she returned to her real situation. We was a very weak situation, right? And very um, sick situation. And then uh, she herself, Elisa, feels that the time had come for her to passing away. And then at that moment, she quickly sees her past since the childhood, teens, adulthood. So this is very interesting here also, because we learn from the Spiritism that at the moment we are going to die, for all of us, we have very fast remembrance, right? What happened in our whole life since the childhood up until the moment we are there, right? Close to passing away. And then incapable of communicating with her daughter, because he was so weak that he even couldn't talk to Anisha, right? Her daughter, which was there. But then she wanted to say goodbye to her older sister, and her older sister lived far away. So we are going to see another phenomena here, right? What does Elisa do? She projected herself from her body, and then she departs volitating. Volitating means it's going through the air, because he's going with her spiritual body, and the spiritual body is not like the dense body, right? And then she can kind of a flying, right? So volitating is kind of a flying in the direction of the city where her sister was living, and it was in the middle of the night. Then saw that her sister was sleeping. Elisa tried to call her, but well, as she's with her spiritual body. Of course, her sister, who was sleeping there on her bed, could not hear Elisa. Right, so Elisa rapped on her sister's bed. Right, so knocking on the bed, make some noise, so that her sister Matilde would wake up. Right, and feeling her sister's influence. Well, it's like you wake up in the night and then with another person in your mind, right? It means that it means that it probably means that that person is trying to contact you. So that's what happens here. And then Elisa starts to talk to her, right, to Matilde, her sister. Well, like saying, well, Matilde, I'm going away. I'm a pass away. I just came here to warn you about what happened to me. But Matilde doesn't hear, right, her because, like I said, Matilde is on her physical body and Elisa is on the spiritual body. So Matilde cannot hear what Elisa is saying, but can in some way apprehend with her brain the message, right? So that's why uh, after waking up, she sat anxiously on her bed, and Matilde, right, and says to herself, Elisa is dead, right? So she feels that at that moment, as a younger sister is passing away in another a city far away, right, from where she lives. So that's interesting phenomena that's happening here, and that uh, can happen frequently, right? Because when a person is dying and he or she wants to well to have someone else know of what is happening to him or her, she can do like Elisa did here, right? So that's an interesting phenomena here. And then back in her home, so after giving the message to her sister, then Elisa come back to her home, tries to enter her physical body, and but then the body is at the last moment, right, of life. And then Andrea Luis says, indecisive and anguished, she couldn't tell if she was alive in the midst of a death or dead in the midst of a life, right? It's a situation where the spirit doesn't know if it still is alive or is already dead, right? So that's what the situation of Elisa. And then other spirits, friends, of course, normally are relatives and friends, or really from who had gone before her to the spiritual realm. They entered the room to help Elisa, right, to disconnect from her body because she is close to death. Then at that moment, Allah said, "Well, it's time for us to go because the final deliverance of Elisa's soul from her physical body is the service of such specialized spiritual workers that had just entered the room, right? So then they leave Anisha's home. So that's what happened on this chapter here, mediumship on the deathbed, right? And they learn a priceless lesson because it's all about mediumship, right? Well, that's why the title of the book is In the Realms of a Mediumship. So you see mediumship in the more diverse situation, right? Diverse places and diverse moments. So mediumship is something that is, like I always say, right? It's not something that happens only on the spirit center, but it can happen everywhere, right? And we can do good things. We can help people with such mediumship faculty. So then, some days later, uh, they go, the group, Aulus, the instructor, André Luis, and his friend Hilario, the trio. They go to the second weekly meeting of the group presided over by Raul Silva. So this was the first spirit center that they went to follow activities, which we saw in the beginning, part one of this book, right? And then they come back again to that group, spirit center, and then there they are there following the activities, and then on the large room, the patients, the workers were there, and also the patients was there, right? And then one of the patients, an afflicted woman, fell into convulsive tears, right? Exclaiming, "Help me! Somebody, please help me!" Right? Like it's similar to Beatles music, right? Beatles song. And then pressing her chest herself with her hands, she added in a moving tone, "Coward, why stab a defenseless woman?" So she was kind of describing a situation, right, where she was being stabbed by another person, right, a man. And then Raul Silva is the incarnate director of the Spirit Center, right? So he approached her and consoled her, caringly, André says, and then she broke into sobs while a discarnate man, not far away, gazed at her with inexpressible sadness, right? So this discarnate man who was there close to her was causing her to have such kind of a remembrance, right, of something that happened in the past. Then Hilario, the André Luis friend, says that, well, I cannot see the spirit whom the woman was communicating with, right? So Hilario thought that that was a mediumship phenomena where such a woman, by saying, well, someone help me, this guy here is trying to stab me, to kill me with a knife. And, well, Hilario said, but I thought that it was a discarnate spirit who was manifesting himself through the woman as a medium. But then Aulus explained the structure that the sorrow and bitterness of that woman originated from herself, right? Because of the proximity of her past enemy. So in this case, there was not a phenomena of mediumship, but there was a phenomenon of animism. Animism is from the spirit of the own person relieves something from her past lives and manifest, right? So that's what was happening here. And then Aldous explained that that's because she was reliving a dolorous experience uh, that took place in a city in the old world last century. So that woman who was here in Brazil in that present incarnation, she had a past life in some city in Europe, right, which is the old world here, on the last century. So it was on the 19th century because this book was written on the middle of the 20th century. Then, so mediumistically speaking, Paul says, that was an authentic case of animism. Right? Anemic phenomena, he explains, are affected under the extracorporeal action of a living human being, in this case of the woman herself, right? And so the woman acted like a perfect somnambulist, for she concentrated fully on her past remembrances, right? We in a state of somnambulism, which is a kind of a trance, like we were sleeping, but it's a somnambulism. We can access those memories from our past lives, right? So that's what happened here with the woman, because of the proximity of her past enemy, right? So always clarify here that they were looking at a mentally ill person requiring their greatest attention for her recovery. So she was there in the Spirit Center also to be helped, right, by the workers of the Spirit Center. And then Aula explained that she is the portrayal of thousands of other souls. What all meaning here that this kind of phenomena happens with a lot of other people, right? So then he said, well, how many beggars drag around the tattered cloak of the ephemeral aristocracy they were in the past, right? So he's saying here that if we find, for example, a beggar on the street, sometimes this beggar was a very rich people on a past life, right? But of course, didn't work very well with his richness on the past, and then now he comes as a beggar, right? So, how many enslaved by poverty and suffering bring with them the vanity and pride of the powerful master they once were. And powerful master, of course, that harmed lots of people because of her, his or her vanity and pride, and now they come with this situation, right? Uh, Enslaved by poverty and suffering. It's how many souls led to be born into the same family bearing invisible swords of aversion toward their own kin, who used to be their cruel adversaries in prior lives, which is the situation like in Anisia's situation, right? Like I always says, someday in the future, someday in the future life, that woman who was controlling her husband could, for example, in a future life, Anisia, let's say, marry Jovinus again in a better situation, and then they receive that woman, for example, that young woman as her daughter, right? So that's the situation here, huh? And then they bear in very invisible sort of aversion. They don't know why, but the reason is on the past, right? And then so that's what Always explained here. And it's what also happened with that woman, right? She was reliving a bad situation that she experimented in the past with that enemy from her, right? Discarnate being, right? That one man. And then Allah said that we can fall into similar situation if we do not learn to cultivate forgetfulness. You see again why we should forgive, right? Because if we do not learn to cultivate forgetfulness of evil and advancing in tandem with the good, then we fall in such situation like this one here, right? So that's why the reason why we must, no matter what people do to us of evil, the importance of forgive, to reconcile, to not have a sentiment of vengeance, revenge, and so on and so forth, right? So that's what we can learn here from this all this situation. So then at this point, André says, the incarnate director of the Spirit Center, Raul Silva, as a skillful psychologist, invited the woman to the benefits of a prayer. Right? So he explained to her that it was up to her to beseech heaven for the grace to forget and expunge the past from her mind in order to find peace. Right? And then after the prayer, she feel more peaceful, and then the patient disconnect herself from the impressions of the past and return to her normal state, right? So that's the benefit of a prayer here again, right? That we can get from also aided, right? Helped by the people from the Spirit Center. So that's what we have today. We went through this four chapter here from 19 to 22. Then the next month we'll see the fifth part, right, of the book. We have more two parts to study. Then we finish the book. I hope I could it was clear, and I hand over to Stefan.
Thank you, my friend. Thank you very much. Let me
Right?
put down here that's an interesting book,
Yeah.
and it's based on our history from Spirit Center.
Mm,
It's kind of common visions. People come to us saying they're seeing this, they're seeing that. So
mm,
it's good. I think it for sure help it, and we will help some people are watching us today.
mm.
Yeah, we do not have any questions. Just Lou VM saying good afternoon. Good afternoon, Lou. Thank you for being here with us.
Thank you.
Also, I want to say hi to our friends at FEESP because we are broadcasting live on FEESP
Mm,
YouTube page as well.
yeah.
So good to have you all here. So, do you want to do our final prayer, my friend?
Yes, sure.
Okay.
Okay, thank you again to having me here today. Then let's go to our fire prayer and thanking all the spiritual benefactors for all the support they always uh, give us during these meetings that we have, studying spiritism, in this case specifically mediumship. And we also would like to thank Jesus for this opportunity of being reunited here in his name. And he said that whenever two or more people were reunited in his name, he would be there. And so we thank him by his support also. And finally, to God, right, by this opportunity of this incarnation where we can understand more about the mystery of life, right? The reason we are here, where we came from, we are going to, and the final goal, which is our perfection, where we can meet our Heavenly Father. So be it.
Amen. Okay, good.
Yeah.
So, my friends, thank you again for joining us today. Thank Watanabe, thank FESP,
Thank you.
thank you Kardec Radio for the opportunity because we are broadcasting in Kardec Radio as well.
Mhm.
And I'll see you next month with the
Ooh,
part number 5.
number 5, yeah.
Yeah, do we have a date for next month, my friend?
13, 13 of May.
13th of May.
Right.
We do have. Okay, great.
Okay.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Roberto.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Trevor. Thank you, Luvian. Thank you. See you next week. Bye bye.
Bye bye.